My latest video showcases how I embellish and sew a rather elaborate medieval drawstring bag made of fabric. I was somewhat surprised by how much time this small accessory actually took. And what surprised me even more is how little time the equivalent bag for my partner took. That's the main reason why I'm sharing this here. I find the comparison of the time invested in similar projects just fascinating. Anyway, I decided to make a simple kidney bag out of leather, the kind that was worn on the belt directly at the hip back in the day. I've only found paintings of men with these bags, so I assume they were mainly worn by men. It's my very first leather project and I was so excited to work on it. I have this piece of Napa buffalo leather measuring 40 by 30 centimeter. Unfortunately, I miscalculated a bit at the beginning because I forgot that I also needed the front part as a pattern piece, not just a large piece I'm taping onto the leather right here. That's why the bag ended up smaller than I had planned. Nevertheless, I managed to distribute all the pattern pieces on the leather, mainly because I adjusted the patterns beforehand in Illustrator and spread them across the available space. After fixing the pattern piece, I cut it with a utility knife. I often had to go over the same line multiple times, probably because the blade wasn't the sharpest. Fortunately, I noticed before cutting that I had forgotten to account for material for the seam allowance at the cutout for the loops, which will be pulled over the belt, and I adjusted the pattern piece accordingly. It was only about an extra centimeter of material in the area where the upper flap and the back piece would be sewn together later. Once that was sorted, I also cut out the inner circle. I cut rectangular pieces like the button and the closure along a ruler. It was faster because I could apply more pressure. Only a few small scraps remained. I think you can call that efficient. Next, I punched small holes for the stitches. I probably could have sewn this leather without the holes, as it's quite soft, but it was significantly faster and my seams stayed straight. I made the holes with these punching tools, doing more or fewer holes simultaneously depending on the curvature of the cut. And in the end, I had this straight row of small holes on each pattern piece that would sewn to another. I also punched a row of holes along the edge of the cutout circle so that I could later sew the loops for the belt together. I sewed a strip of leather around the buckle that closes the bag and then attached it to the flap of the bag. I then sewed the counterpart to the bottom of the bag. In both cases, I pre-punched the locations with holes to make sewing easier. Then I sewed the button of the bag, which consists of 3 pieces. as I couldn't cut it in one piece from the leather. The pre-punched holes were very helpful in this, as I believe the seam would have been very wavy without them. Next I sewed this bottom onto the front part. I used a kind of running stitch. However, at the end of the seam, I turned the work around and completed it to a saddle stitch to make the seam way stronger. I sewed the loops, so the back piece to the flap, the same way, first in one direction and then back to close the gaps between each stitch. In this way the saddle stitch is created. I used the black linen thread because I wanted to stay as close as possible to the historical reality. And I'm also curious to see if and how long the stitches hold. Finally, I took care of the closure flap and cut the end into a somewhat presentable point. Then I punched holes for the clasp. I probably did more than necessary, but this way the kidney bag can be worn empty or very full. Everything in between is also possible. So in one day I completed this kidney bag, a completely different project caliber than my textile bag, on which I worked for over a week. Of course in sequences, but still. In the end it matters that everyone is happy with their bag, and my partner is looking forward to using it properly for the first time, hopefully soon.